Okay, it's now about a week and a half after I made the first part of this, and a few people watched part one and said, hey, we'd like to hear the rest of it. And frankly, it's something I want to do for myself. I'm getting older. I gained a bunch of weight over the last 5 years, and something called my triglycerides, or fat in your blood, kind of like cholesterol, shot up and aggravated my pancreas, and haven't been feeling all that great. And it's like, no time like the present when you're 65, so want to get it done. I want to clear up a couple of things. I made an error in the first portion, just misspoke. I think it was obvious. I mentioned at one point I was talking to a friend of mine on the phone, and her name was Carolyn, and she had been carpooling to work with a lady named Felicia. And I said, and Felicia said, well, I was talking to Carolyn, and that's what I meant. I think it's obvious that I misspoke, a minor thing. One other thing I want to mention, too, was before I saw this UFO, the night before I saw it, I mentioned in the first video that I was walking out of my house to go play a gig, to go play a musical job, and I saw on the front page of the Flint Journal, the local newspaper, I saw an article about a lady calling 911. It was a transcript of called to 911 about a UFO sighting in Flint, and then I mentioned later in that video that in 2017, 23 years later, I went down to the Flint Public Library and looked at the newspaper on microfilm and found these two articles. And interestingly, I did not find the article that I originally saw way back in '94 as I was walking out of the house that night. And I think the deal there was we didn't take the newspaper, and newspapers a lot of times later on, my mom would buy it here and there, my wife would buy it, I would buy it, we'd get them, usually bought one, but not always. Bottom line was, at the library, I did not know how to use that microfilm thing, and the lady had to hook it up. It took a long time. I had limited time, and the roll that I had only went back to the 15th, and I'm wondering if that newspaper that I saw had been laying around the house, which they did sometimes, for like a week and a half, because like I said, in the 2 weeks leading up to this thing, there'd been a lot of UFO sightings in Michigan, although I thought they'd been on the other side of the state. I had never heard of any in Flint until I saw that article. But I want to go back to the library and find that article that I saw, originally. But the articles that I found were, pretty interesting and pretty strange. And like I said, this is going to get kind of weird, and I don't know what the hell to think of any of it. And I'm sure neither will you. I don't know what to tell you other than this is what happened. And, the facts are, what happened is I'm telling you what happened, and this is all I can tell you. Okay, so I'd called MUFON and got this lady who told me about these two ladies who were carpooling to work and got turned around and lost time and all this crazy stuff. And then I talked to this gal at work, or a friend of mine at work, or really my only friend there at work. And she had told me almost a very, very similar story without having ever heard the story that I'd heard. So, a lady named Carolyn. So, Felicia was the passenger in that van that I talked about, as I said, and I knew her name, and that was it. We didn't sit and talk, and I didn't really know her. So I went to work on Monday, and as I said, Carolyn came running up to me and said, call me, and I described what she told me in the first video, which was very odd. By chance, my then wife, who is now my ex-wife, I was between good jobs. I normally had good jobs, and this was a crappy job, and we were kind of struggling, and she never worked, but in our entire marriage. The only time she ever worked was she decided to go to work with me to apply at this Deco Manufacturing, which she had done. So on Monday, when I went to work, my wife started working there too, and I explained what happened. I called Carolyn, blah, blah, blah. Well, on Tuesday, my wife and I went to work, and when we got done, we're driving home, and by chance, she had worked on a line, on a production line with Felicia, the gal who had been in the passenger seat of that the van driven by Carolyn. And apparently, Felicia must have known that Carolyn spoke to me. I'm thinking she determined that Shelley was my wife, and we're driving home, and this is what my wife says to me, right? Shelley, she says, you're not going to believe what Felicia told me. And I'm like, where's this going? It's like, what next? And she said that unlike Carolyn, Felicia was real matter-of-fact about it. And I'm just telling you what she said. And my ex-wife was not, she was into evangelical Christianity. She was not a UFO person at all. So she said, well, Felicia just said to me that her and Carolyn got abducted by aliens, and that she said she doesn't know why, but she's been trying to get pregnant with her husband for a couple of years, and she keeps having miscarriages, and she doesn't know why, but she thinks these guys made her pregnant. And I was like, what the hell? I mean, I was like, at that point, I'd heard enough. I never even spoke to Felicia about this ever. And I only worked there about another, not long, about 6 weeks, and I got a good job and left that. But, I mean, that just sounded crazy to me. And that's going to sound crazy to anybody watching this. It sounds like complete, just bullshit. I mean, I was like, what? Now we're talking what? I was impregnated by an alien. I was like, come on here. But that's what, like I said, that's what Felicia told Shelley, my wife. She said that she was pretty calm and cool about it. She said that her and Carolyn had been abducted by aliens, and she didn't know why, but she thought that these guys had, quote, made her pregnant. Okay, this story is long and weird and crazy, and if you've listened to it this far, kind of a spoiler alert, I've got some news on the story that Felicia had about becoming pregnant from aliens. I never did talk to her personally, and how I got the news about her is kind of weird, and but I think you'll find it interesting and perhaps unbelievable. I still wrestle with all this stuff, but that's coming up in just a minute. I kind of want to explain what happened after all of this, in the immediate aftermath of this, and then tell you about Felicia and some other stuff. Okay, to get back to Carolyn for just a second here. I talked to Carolyn that next week there once or twice, and I honestly can't remember if it was once or twice, and I did not write down what she told me, but I know she never really expanded on this Iron Tomb thing, other than to say that she recalled some kind of physical examination from a being that had an eye that was so big she could see her reflection in its eye. That's what she told me. And she was really, really a mess. She was not like Felicia. She was a mess. I was really, as I said previously, afraid for her, just her well-being. She seemed like she was really coming unwound. So, and to jump ahead a little bit, about 4 years later, I was always afraid to call Carolyn and press her on any of this stuff. And with the aid of four cans of beer or something, about 4 or 5 years after this happened, I called her up. I kept her phone number. I still have it to this day. In fact, how stable is Carolyn? It is now 2017, and I did a Google search for for that phone number, and it's still associated with her at a specific address, and she still has the same damn phone number. Apparently, if Google's right. But anyway, 4 years later, I had a couple of beers, and I called her house, and I got her husband, and explained myself. I said I used to work with Carolyn. We worked at a factory down near Brighton, and I was kind of her sounding board back then. She had some kind of a strange story, and I just wondered if I could speak to her. Very nice guy. He kind of chuckled. He said, well, guy, I'll tell you what. He said, I know what you're talking about. And he said, something happened out there. We just can't know what it was. And he said, Carolyn can't talk about it. He said she gets too upset. So, whatever happened to Carolyn obviously was something. To this day, I won't call her because I can't imagine what she's gone through. And I don't want to upset her. Just seeing this thing scared the life out of me. And kind of changed my life. If what she said happened to her, I can't imagine it. So I won't call her. I'd love to, but I just won't do it. Gee, what happened? Suddenly it's nighttime. Actually uploaded this video and decided I wanted to make some edits generally, and also wanted to explain that while this video is about my sighting, I also want to include something that happened about 5 years ago that I think involved a UFO, and is it related to my sighting exactly? I don't know. I wonder why it happened to me. and what was going on. So, it may be a bit tangential, but I think it's important. It's important to me. And I do feel like somehow, in a way that I can't explain, related to the sighting that I had back in '94. And this happened like in 2012 or 2013. So, okay, this is a very short kind of lifetime for women portion of this video. This is going to be kind of a departure here. Just about myself a little bit. I grew up kind of with low self-esteem, ended up being a fairly successful musician, working and living out in Las Vegas, lived in a casino for 6 months, got a house band at the Dunes Casino, had my own room, worked in Reno, worked in Nashville, right in Printer's Alley, and I just seemed to kind of attract the wrong kind of women, and I had some failed marriages. Anyway, that's that story, and my last marriage was particularly bad. I was married to this little Mexican lady. She's a good person, had a lot of problems. Drove us to bankruptcy. I lost 2 houses in Lansing, Michigan, a mobile home, cars, you name it. I lost everything. And she had a gambling problem, and that's for another video. But a lot of years passed. I had not seen a UFO or anything, and but I was extremely depressed. What I had done was I'd had to move back to a rental house that I owned in Flint, Michigan, which when I bought was not a particularly bad neighborhood, but by the time I moved back there in 2003, it was a horrific neighborhood, and there were a lot of arsons, and like I said, my wife, God bless her, she was pretty crazy. She bought a house across the street because she had some kids who didn't have jobs. This is really why she bought it. And we were kind of living apart, that separate lives thing. Right across the street, she's living there with her 2 kids, and so she would come over and make me dinner and whatever. But anyway, it was a very strange, bad marriage. And, the whole thing about UFOs, I would listen to some stuff on the radio now and then or on the internet, as I said. But, I didn't walk around thinking about it all the time or anything like that. And then, well, I would say it was about 5 years ago. I think it was like 2012. I was in the house by myself. She was across the street with her kids, and I was up late, just farting around, playing around with the internet at like 3 in the morning because I couldn't sleep, play money poker on the internet, right? Not thinking about UFOs or anything like that. I walked out to the kitchen at about 3 in the morning to get a cup of coffee because I was, like I said, playing on the internet. And right above the coffee pot sat on a little stand, and there was a window above it that you could see our driveway, and then there was a lot where there'd been a house that some arsonists had burned down, and it was a crazy place. I was standing there pouring a cup of coffee, and suddenly the perimeter of my house, this blue light came on, this crazy blue light. I've never seen anything like it. The closest thing I've ever seen to it was I was having a tooth bonded before I had to get dentures about 4 years ago, and they were drying this enamel stuff, and they turned on this light to dry it, and I've got this mouthful of stuff, and I'm going, what kind of light is that? What kind of light? And they were like, it's infrared. Well, it reminded me, it was the only thing I've ever seen like it. The whole perimeter of my house lit up, and it's blue light, like daylight, with no shadows or anything. And it only extended out to like that. It covered that vacant lot and a little bit of the next house, and then it stopped. I mean, it was really odd. I've never seen anything like it. And it came on, and it was only on for like, 3 or 4 seconds. And I stood there with coffee, and it went out, and I thought to myself, man, did I just see that? It was so weird. And the minute I thought that, it came back on. Again, it's just the whole area is bathed in this blue light. And I don't know why I said, you jokers. And I immediately associated it with a UFO. And I ran out the front door, which is only about maybe 12, 15 feet from where I was standing. And by the time I got to the front porch, it was out. There wasn't a dog barking. There wasn't a car for 2 blocks in either direction. And it was extremely weird. Short of the UFO that I saw in '94 from, like 100 feet, this was like the strangest thing I've ever seen. Just totally inexplicable. And I've often said, when I've tried to describe it, that blue light kind of lived in that area. And by that I mean it wasn't like brighter in one spot and darker in one spot, like if you shined a light. It was kind of like as if the sun had come up and it was just like blue daylight. And I mentioned that it lit up my driveway and a vacant lot and then the side of a house that was just beyond the lot. That house was abandoned, as was the house to the south of me. And, I don't know why I associated it immediately with a UFO, because at that point in my life, I'd never read anything about blue lights being associated with UFOs. In the last, 2 years, I've done some Google searches and read some things that I guess sometimes they are, but I had never heard of that. But the minute it came on, that's what I thought. Like I said, you jokers. And I thought, what's that movie? They're back. I mean, I thought that's what it was, and I don't know why. And in the morning, my wife, who had spent the night across the street, came over and made coffee and breakfast, as was her habit. And we talked, and I told her about this crazy blue light that had come on all around the house. And she was like, wow, that's weird. She knew me and knew, I wouldn't make this up. Of course, she didn't know how totally weird it was because she hadn't seen it. But, I made her aware of what had happened anyway, So anyway, about 4 or 5 days later, my wife knocks on the door at about 11 o'clock at night. She'd been across the street. And she said the kids are watching some movie on TV that she didn't want to see. And she had some VHS tapes. She loved movies. And she said, do you care if I lay on the couch and watch movies? And I'm like, of course not. Go ahead. So I went to bed in the bedroom. And she slept out on the couch. Watched the movies and then went to sleep. And in the morning, I'm still laying in bed, and she opens the bedroom door, and she's all kind of wigged out and very animated. And she's going, that blue light that you told me about, it came on all around the house. She said, I call it laser blue. And I'm like, yeah, that would be the light. I mean, that's a pretty good description. It's kind of a laser or ultraviolet kind of blue. And she said, it came on all around the house. And I said, well, did you go outside to try to see where it was coming from? And she said, no, I was too scared, And I said, why didn't you wake me up? And she said, I tried to wake you up. She said, I couldn't get you to wake up. She said, and I sleep pretty light normally. She said, I was like a dead man. She said, she couldn't even shake me awake. So I don't know what's up with that. But it's a very, very strange light. Like I said, it was no shadows. It was kind of I don't know what the word would be, but it was just, it was restricted to an area when I looked out the window that night, just kind of around my house. It was just this crazy blue light kind of bathing my house. Well, it's getting kind of dark in here. I think it's going to rain, and I'm going to try to kind of wrap this up. Anyway, about a month after I saw that blue light, I mentioned that I'd been in kind of the depths of depression. And I've never been prone to depression, but in that marriage, I had guns pointed at me. I was attacked with knives, objects, and I mean for no reason. It was crazy, and it was very bad. And about a month after that blue light episode, I ran into a gal that I had been in love with since I was 14. She was my next door neighbor growing up. We've known each other since we were 9 years old, and her husband passed away. The wonderful thing about it was she was somebody with whom I could talk about this whole thing, and she would know that if I said it, it's the truth. I mean, she knows who I am to the core. So she is my strength and my love, and life changed so much. She's funny. She thinks, of course, she's heard this story ad nauseum. I've talked about it a lot, and she thinks maybe I was abducted, which I don't believe, but she thinks the aliens had something to do with us getting together. And my thing, I'm kind of skeptical about all of that, but who knows? So anyway, we're together, and that's good. But about Felicia, and I've talked about how weird this all is. So Linda and I, that's my fiance, we get together, and it's been a wonderful 4.5 years, whatever it is. And she does a search one night on Google for carpool alien abduction Flint, something I'd never done that. And lo and behold, what does she find? But she finds an article, or not an article, a post made by, it's unsigned but obviously written by Felicia. It's a long, rambling paragraph on the MUFON website, submitted in 2009, many years after this 94 sighting. But as you recall, Felicia was the one who told my ex-wife, my then wife Shelley, that she thought these guys made her pregnant. And she describes it's obviously written by Felicia. She's sitting in the passenger seat. It's a conversion van. They start spinning around. They're going from Flint to, So, and it ends with a sentence, and I do not have it in front of me. I will post a link to it below, saying, and guess what? 9 months later, I had my son, who is now 17. I about fell over dead. I was like, I could not believe it. I was like, it's been a crazy journey. And for anybody listening to this, I can't even recommend you believe it. It's, there's so much craziness on the internet, on YouTube. Like I said, people claim to know what all this stuff means. I don't. In fact, I may make another video. Pardon me. I got dentures about it 3 months ago. I may make another video in which I describe how this has affected me. And it's, everybody thinks I want to see UFO. For myself, this has not been the best thing. I think I would have rather had the mystery. And I mean, it's still a mystery to an extent, but I know that there's something to it that's unusual. I feel. That's what I believe. So with that, I'm going to end this. I might put a little outro on this, maybe not, but that's what happened. And I will put a link to the thing that Felicia wrote. By the way, it's interesting to me. Carolyn was this very sharp lady, and Felicia, I'm not implying at all that she was stupid, but she struck me as kind of a simpler kind of gal. She wasn't that freaked out by all of this, which I can't even imagine. That's beyond me. But she actually has the date wrong by a week. She gives the date in this article, and she's got it. It's either a week before or after, but it happened on March 18th. So with that, I'm out. Thank you for listening. I hope you're careful about what you believe on the internet, whether it's for me or anybody else. I think you need to have something in your own life to absolutely prove these kinds of wild stories to be true, or, even if you've had an experience in your life, it doesn't prove that what I'm telling is the truth. What I'm telling you is the truth, but, it's the truth, but that's not proof. So with that, I'm out. God bless you. Thank you for listening. I did decide to tack on this little outro thing here. I might upload some much briefer videos, or one anyway, in which I talk about a couple of different things. I recently went to 2 MUFON meetings. I've been thinking about going for years. I was kind of disappointed in that. And I think perhaps more importantly, I left out the fact that in these intervening years since I saw this, I've bumped into a couple of people who have seen it at the same place at different times, different years. And obviously, given the nature of this topic, I don't go around talking about it very much. So it makes me wonder how many people in this area have seen this thing. Funny how I happened to talk to these people. And one in particular was a strange set of circumstances that it came up. And I want to talk a little bit about how it affected me, and perhaps theorize a little bit about what these could represent. And I don't claim to know. But I may post another video or two. But what you've just seen is basically the story of this sighting and most of the important things that happened. So if you're interested, I might be posting, as I said, a couple more short videos.